Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to our Genesis study. We are now in Genesis chapter 20, and Genesis 20 to me falls in an interesting place because if we're remembering coming from chapter 18, Abraham pleads with Yahusha on the behalf of Sodom, right, to find some that would be saved, in a wicked city. And then we see the two angels go into Sodom in chapter 19 with Lot, and we watch the depravity of the minds of all of those that are in Sodom, and how given the opportunity they rejected it, and he had to destroy it. And then we see Lot's family come out. We see his wife turn to a pillar of salt, and we see the minds of his daughters seek to get impregnated by their father in order to preserve the seed. But it was still deception. It was still sin. But we watch the mindsets of the people that are involved in this foundational story of our faith. All of this is in the making of what we see Abraham going through of our patriarch. So when we get to chapter 20, we're looking at Abraham seeing the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's, in the backdrop of it. And as we go into chapter 20, we'll see that he then heads south. He then heads down to the Negev. There's no reason given why he's heading down. So we can only imagine. Maybe he didn't like the smell of the smoke. Maybe he didn't want to be anywhere close in the vicinity where such wickedness presided. I don't know. I don't know why he went south. But then we see him getting into familiar territory with his faith. So there are 17 verses here. Let's take the first 7, and then we'll discuss. Who wants to read the first 7 verses of chapter 20, Genesis? Brother Rick?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it.
Thank you,
Verse
brother.
7, all right. And Abraham journeyed from thence towards the county of Negev, and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah, his woman, she is my sister. And Abmelich, king of Gerar, sent and took Alephtav Sarah. But Elohim came to Abmelich in a dream by night and said to him, behold, you are but a dead man, for the woman which you have taken, for she is a man's woman. But Abmelich had not come near her, and he said at dawn, will you slay also a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, she is my sister. And she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands have I done this. And Elohim said unto him in a dream, yea, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I you not to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his woman, for he is a prophet, and she shall pray for you, and you shall live. And if you restore her not, know that you shall surely die, you and all that are yours. Very interesting how this is revealed that Sarah is actually Abraham's sister, but also his wife, which kind of baffles the mind in a sense in our thinking today. Mm-hmm. But there was a covenant that was placed upon both of them, and evidently it was part of Yahuwah's plan. He allowed it to be. But when this man took her, he thought he was taking a woman that was, this man's sister. And his heart or his intentions weren't wrong. But Yahuwah gave him a warning. You know, you can't have another man's wife, or you'll surely die. And I think that's an interesting warning for us these days to really think about, you know, that warning. How many people in this world do exactly what he told this man not to do? And he did it in a dream. He warned him. So there must have been a reason that this guy was able to hear. He had a relationship with Yahuwah, evidently, because he called himself a righteous man in a righteous nation. Which is interesting, is those other two words where they stayed was Kodesh and Shuhar. I think I'd like to look at those two words, but I think Kodesh, isn't that something has to do with being set apart, unless that's a different version of that word. Not sure what Shahar means, but, you know, as we found as we're going through these studies, these words always have some kind of meaning to them. They're making a statement beyond just a name. So that would be something I want to pull apart a little bit while you guys are talking. I'll grab those words, unless you're already doing so, it looks like.
Yeah, well, no, you can pull them up, because I was going to look at some other things in what you just read.
Okay, go ahead. I'll go ahead and get into this then real quick.
Yeah, go. You look at that. I'm gonna let Emeka go before I go, because I wanna bring kind of not necessarily a different approach to our thinking, but something we may not think about when we read this passage. So go ahead, Emeka.
Yeah, I thought verse 7 to me caught my attention, because he says, now therefore restore the man his woman, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for you, and you shall live. And if you restore her not, know that you shall surely die, you and all that are yours. You know, acknowledging Father Abraham as a prophet, that is something that stuck out to me right now, because I know for the most part, most people think like the prophets are Moshe and those that came after Moshe, you know, but you see here that Abraham was even a prophet. So it definitely leaves me, you know, just a question like, you know, who were some of the other prophets, you know, before, let's say, even Abraham? Like, were there other prophets before even Abraham, you know, that walked according to? And I definitely think, you know, looking at those that were pre-flood, you know, Noah and the flood, those that were before Noah and the flood, like actually Noah himself would probably also be considered a prophet. And I don't think many people acknowledge them as that, you know, and I think there's a lot to learn, considering that they're prophets. There's a lot to learn from those lessons that even, you know, they went through and the things that they were speaking on. So, you know, just seeing that right now, you know, just have my mind going a little bit on that topic.
Yeah,
definitely something I want to look into.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, Emeka. This is actually the very first time prophet is used in Scripture, as it relates to Abraham. And, you know, Abraham not necessarily being one that will go out and preach the word, but by his life, he became a spokesman for Yahuwah, which is also a meaning. It means to teach and to be a mouthpiece, but it means a spokesman, one who intercedes for the people. So absolutely good point there. But I wanted to look at something that we often don't look at, because at least I haven't heard it looked at. But Rick kind of touched on it, because Rick said, and as we're going to read, you know, later on, this is actually Abraham's sister, right? With this being Abraham's sister, and this being always presented to us as a lie, you know, was he lying when he said it was his sister? And the answer is no, he wasn't lying. This was actually his sister. They shared the same father. But it opened up a whole idea and understanding for me about what lying is, what deception is. And as we already know, sin is, there are sins of commission, sins that we commit, and there are sins of omission, things that we don't do that we should do that become sin. Like we talked a few weeks back on the topic of the sin of prayerlessness, something that we should be doing that we aren't doing, and when we don't do it, we're sinning, right? It's transgressions. So that means that lying can also be withholding information that is pertinent to the situation or pertinent to the conversation. Because he put this whole region in jeopardy by simply leaving out the fact that that was his wife. And he only shared part of the information that it was his sister. That wife part is a big thing here, because when he actually says, you know, he says, a man's wife, you know, Rick pulled out the fact that he's speaking of how we should not touch a man's wife and how it is transgression. But I think in this particular part, it's speaking of the prominence of this particular woman and this particular man and what he was doing. In his dream, it was addressed, and he knew immediately that he was going against what Yahuah wanted. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, because I think that's missed. The fact that everyone thinks that Abraham's lying, that that's his sister, when it's actually his sister. He's not lying that's his sister. He's lying and not also saying that it's his wife. That's where the lie comes in. That's where the deception is. And I think it's missed. And so many people are surprised when they find out, oh, it really was a sister. So the lie wasn't that it was a sister. The lie was not withholding or not presenting the whole truth of who Sarai was to him, or Sarah at this point was to him. Go ahead, Brian.
I was wondering, am I missing? I was wondering what was, because I was looking back on the chapter, I didn't see like the motive. Like, what's the motive for him not disclosing that information?
Oh, we're gonna get to that. Abraham's actually gonna say why he did it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. He's actually gonna say that. So we'll get to that in the next couple of verses. But Rick, you kind of did you miss that whole part we were just talking about?
Yeah, my internet went out.
Okay, no problem. So we were just discussing, and I'll just share for brevity of time. We were talking, I brought up the idea that, you know, this is all often looked at as Abraham lied and said it was a sister. That wasn't the lie. That was actually the truth. The lie and the deception was withholding the fact that it was his wife. So we talked about being also deceptive and also lying when we don't give information that is pertinent to the situation or the discussion or the matter at hand at that time. Sins
Right.
of omission, sins of commission. So that is often overlooked. And people, that's why people are so surprised when they find out, no, it really was his sister. That wasn't the lie. He wasn't lying about that.
Right.
He was lying and not sharing that that was his wife. You know, then putting any man that touched her into immediate sin, into immediate transgression. So were you able to look up Shore and
I was.
Okay.
We're looking at somebody using the bathroom. We got Kadosh or Kodesh, which basically is sacred, where it's also a place in the desert, which is basically just outside of Egypt.
Right.
And then Sohar, I'm sorry, the Sohar is actually a place in the desert that's outside of Egypt. And interesting, it comes from the word shore, which means a head of cattle. And I know that he had something, he had a lot of cattle and stuff. So I'm wondering if that was one of the reasons that, you know, they may have stayed in this area, because it is a set apart, a sacred place that was, you know, a place that was just outside of the border of Egypt. So I'm wondering if that's some of the reason why he chose this place, you know, because of the meaning or something that has to do with his cattle. Not sure, but that's part of the root of that word.
Yeah, I think also, you know, the whole idea of this, you know, as we look at it, he did the exact same thing that he did in chapter 12 when they went down into Egypt.
Yeah.
Right? He had the same ideas, and we're going to read in the next several verses why. So I don't want to spoil that, but the idea that he would go back to something that caused the birth of Ishmael, that caused the separation of his two sons, that caused him to push him away, that caused a whole nother nation, you know, and the flesh mindset that was for him to fall back into that same thing for fear, as we're going to find out. This is all about fear. So, you know, what does that mean to us? You know, we didn't learn from our first mistake. We go back and do the same thing. We're regurgitating, you know.
That's what a dog does, right?
We're unstable in all of our ways. You know, I spew thee out of their mouth. You know, we are vomit. We become vomit. We become lukewarm when we can't solidify our faith on trusting in them. You know, and we're left to our own devices, and our own devices are always sinister in foundation. You know, you start off with a deceptive statement to explain your circumstances that causes sin. And we talked about before, we add sin to sin. You know, it's amazing. Like when we look at it, you know, and in parallel to our lives, he's talking about us. This is the same way we do things. You know, you go to the market and you put the water on the bottom part of the rack, and you go out the supermarket because you forgot. Do you go back and say, listen, I got a pack of water down here that you missed it? That's a sin too. You omitted it. You know, so what are those things in our lives that we can relate to when it comes to this? We fall back into our own ways. We go back to our own strengths. We devise plans in our own minds that don't resemble the Father. So that's definitely what's going on here. And it's amazing because when we read the next couple verses, I'm trying to understand who Abimelech was. You know what I mean? Like what Abraham thinks is going to happen versus him listening to Yah. Like, as we saw, you know, we'll see later, you know, as we go along with Moshe, Pharaoh wasn't listening to him. He was evil. He didn't care. He was hard. He hardened his heart. But Abimelech listens. He does everything that he's supposed to do. You know, when he went to Egypt earlier, they listened when Yah spoke to them. You know, so evil or not, they heard the voice of Yah and they knew who he was. So anyone else got anything in those first 7 verses? Want to share anything?
It does make me wonder why would he just say this is my sister and not, you know, this is my wife. Wonder why he would make that declaration, knowing that if he would have said it was his wife, there would have been nothing more question. But why would he make that statement, this is my sister, and leave that open like that? You know, that makes me wonder, what was his thinking? Why did he do that? You know, because it would be easy to say, hey, this is my wife. And then that would have sealed the deal. I mean, this guy probably wouldn't ever even mess with her.
Well, that question rings so much, so I'm going to spoil the surprise. But he believed that the fear of Yah was not in the place that he was going. So he thought in order to seize him, they would take his wife if they knew it was his wife first. So to preserve his own life, put Sarah out there as his sister. get taken anyway. It was fear, so, but any more in that first 7? It's a lot still left in there. Come on, JP. I know you got something in there. Come on, man.
JP said, I'm good.
Yo, I got something.
Go ahead.
So in verse where it says, let me see, in verse 6, it says, and Elohim said unto him in a dream, yeah, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I you not to touch her. So you see how the Father reaches out to help prevent him from sinning. So it's almost like, the Father has he takes charge when he can to help prevent you from sinning, to give you a warning, and you see him do this with Abmelich right here. And it's like, how many times have, I think about it in life, like how many times have we ourselves had that conscious awareness where it's like, yo, you shouldn't be doing this, but you end up doing it anyway, and I think that, that's where, and the scripture talks about how in Romans chapter 2, Paul says, your conscience bears witness against you, and I definitely believe that's a tool for the Father to use to say, hey, look, this is wrong. And when you get that awareness in your conscience, at that moment, you have to react on it, because at that moment, when you choose to do what you know is wrong in your conscience, it becomes sin. So, and in a situation when you don't know it's wrong, if you have that connection relationship with the Father, he can reach out and make you aware that what you're about to do is wrong and you will be committing sin, by doing so. So I definitely thought that was interesting how the Father reached out to save Abimelech from sinning.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely grace bestowed. This is definitely something I wanted to look at, and I was wondering if you guys saw, because, he immediately, Abimelech is like he says in verse 4, you slay a righteous nation also, looking at what just happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. Everyone knew what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. So apparently this is considered a righteous nation, He's saying, and then Yah answers him and he says, in the integrity, he said, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, but even in your own heart, what does Yah say about the heart of man? It's deceitful and wicked above all things. Who can know it? That's why you still need my grace. He says, even in your heart, integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning. So in your heart, you still would have sinned. You know what I mean? You can't state the claim that don't do this to me because I'm a good man. No one is good, according to Yah. You are able to be saved because of my grace. So I think we got to look at that too. We got to see that too is also being said in this passage, right? Anyone agree?
Right. I think what he was really saying, though, is like, I didn't know she was, in my heart, I was not intending to sin. But even though his heart wasn't intending to sin, he still would have sinned because she was married, even though he didn't know.
That was the point.
That's a lesson to learn right there, that even if our intentions are right, you're going to do something that's unknown to you that can still cause you to sin.
Absolutely. That's exactly my point. Like, even though in your heart you knew you were doing the right thing, it was still a sin. Right. It was the grace that I bestowed upon you and not allowing you to go ahead, because you were going to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? You put her in the harem. So yeah, I think we definitely got to see that point. We definitely got to see that lesson in, there is still sin that we don't know we do, and it has consequences, unless the grace, therefore, the arm of Yah is bestowed to you. So,
and you have the ear to hear him speaking to you, or recognize when he sends you a witness in a dream, that he's telling you something, to spare you from doing that, because you were trying to do it in the right way, but you didn't know. But he's like, hey, okay, that doesn't change anything. You were still going to sin, but I am warning you, don't do this.
Yep. Good point. Great point, Emeka. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I just thought, I think you just touched on it, Rick, the dreaming part. I think that is really interesting. Because people, like in our modern world, I feel like it's like, if you don't really take their dreams seriously, and how, like, I know in my own life, I've had dreams on several times that actually it came true in real life. And then I was like, whoa, that's why I really started paying attention. And it's like, it's amazing. Like we were talking about the spirit earlier, the difference between your spirit and your body and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's like when you are sleeping, your Yahuwah can communicate with your spirit. And it's like, your body is physically sleeping, but your spirit is aware, and you're more sensitive to hearing. If I may argue, I believe you're more sensitive to hearing his voice when you're sleeping than at any other time, because you're totally open. You're in that spiritual realm when you're asleep. And just taking your dreams seriously. I think is a really that's jumped out at me, those dreams, how y'all can communicate you through your dreams and warn you. And I've experienced that in my own life, and it's like, I didn't heed the warning, and what happened in the dream happened in real life. And I was like, wow, if I only paid attention to the dream that warned me ahead of time, I could have avoided calamity. And it's a powerful thing. So that's all I wanted to add.
Absolutely, for sure. Go ahead, JP. Then Tyrone.
Did you guys touch on how he did this in Egypt already?
Yeah.
Okay, then I don't got nothing. I don't want to add to nothing.
I mean, you might have something more.
No, I was just seeing it. I kept seeing it, and I thought for a second, as I read it, I thought he was actually just referring to that time.
Okay.
But then I was thinking about how he did this a second time.
Right.
And I was kind of like, wow, like even though he went, it's like, I don't know. I guess I was just thinking like how Abraham, what is it? I don't know what the scriptures say about him and his character and things like that. So I would have to look into that more if it says he was a righteous man, what he says, but how he's done that a second time, it kind of baffled me right now. Just like the fear.
When we touched on it, we talked about how we kind of related it to our lives. What do we do in a troubled situation?
Right.
Do we fall back to what we know would work? Do we devise plans in our own mind? Because this is a devised plan on what he thought. He thought that this was going to be a place that didn't obey Yah. He thought that this was going to be a place that would be of detriment to him personally. So he did this the same way he did in Egypt to protect himself. You know what I mean? Right. He didn't do it to protect Sarah. He did it to protect himself, because he thought if they want Sarah, then they're going to kill me too. To get her. This way they'll just take you and leave me alone because it doesn't mean anything.
Man, that's amazing.
Well, we like creatures of habit, we tend to do the same things repeatedly, go back to where our comfort level is. Maybe that's what he's doing here. It's interesting.
Yep. Go ahead, Tyrone.
Yeah, I was just thinking that what you were saying and this everything, And a righteous man, you know what the Father says. He tells us, lean not to your own understanding, but in all things acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. That's exactly what He was doing with this brother here. He was directing his path. He didn't see the error that he was stepping into. So that's one thing that shows the Father's hand in all this. He will direct us, and this shows it right here when he was ready to do something that he shouldn't have and everything. So that's just something I wanted to point out.
Good, brother. Thank you. Lean not into your own understanding, right?
Right.
So who wants to take verse 8 to 17? Read the rest of the chapter. Verse
I'll
8.
go ahead, brother.
You got it?
Yeah.
All the way through 18.
Therefore, see, what's that? How do you pronounce his name again?
Yeah, read all the way through 17. Stop at 18.
All right. I mean, how you pronounce his name again?
Oh, no. Stop at 19. I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry.
Therefore,
18, the last verse in the chapter. I'm sorry.
So
Abimelech.
Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears. And the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, what hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear of Elohim is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet, indeed, she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came to pass, when Elohim caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, this is thy kindness, which thou shalt show unto me at every place, whether we shall come, say of me, he is my brother. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants, and gave them unto Abraham, and restored him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, behold, my hand is before thee. Dwell where it pleaseth thee. Want me to continue on? And unto Sarah he said, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all over. Thus she was reproved. So Abraham prayed unto Elohim, and Elohim healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. For Yahuah had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife.
What you want? You say anything you want to pull out there?
Not man. Reflecting what you brothers got to say.
Okay. Who has something to share about this? It's a lot in there.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, JP. Then Brian.
I just think it's, it's interesting that, I mean, towards the end, of course, verse 17, it says, so Abraham prayed unto Elohim. So he prayed for, kind of like the reconciliation, like the mending back. And Elohim healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. For Yahuah had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. it kind of just shows like this, like the hand of Yahuwah, how powerful it is.
Mm-hmm.
How powerful it is. Kind of reminds me of the plagues or something like in Egypt, like it's gonna go down and he's gonna make it happen. And it, you know, kind of like what we're gonna talk about today with Jonah. It's like if you ain't gonna listen, he's gonna make it known to you. So I just thought that was amazing. You know, we see that all the women weren't gonna be able to have children. So luckily, I guess, I mean, in a weird way to say it like that, but Abmelich, he really listened. He listened and he obeyed, and he took what Yahuwah told him in the dream for reality, and said, "Man, like this is something I gotta." And he went forward with it, and he found out the truth. And because if not, then they would have never had no babies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's, you know, like you said, luckily, but nah, it was gracefully. You know what I mean? It's just like, and what a testimony. And here is where the prophetic, the prophet that was mentioned earlier comes in. He then becomes a prophet. He prays for the people. The people get healed. What a testimony this is to this area where these people are. Now they know who Elohim is. You know, how many people now become children of Israel because of this, right? So, you know, clearly Abraham was a prophet here. And man, it's so much in there. Brother Brian?
Yeah. It's interesting how, yeah, even when we, like, sometimes it looks bad when we mess stuff up, Yahuwah works it out for our good. And he also, it's like in this situation here, he gets the glory out of it, because it's like a testimony to Yah is Yah. And but yeah, I was thinking about too here. Yeah, to me it's like I see like that fear, like y'all was mentioning earlier, that fear of the nation, the fear of man basically, and how that, like, in second, or was it Second Timothy, I believe it says that Yah has not given us a spirit of fear, of power, and of love, and of a sound mind. And how, like, sometimes in situations, like when we experience that emotion of fear, we resort to, like, in this situation, we might resort to lying and things like that. And I know that in my own life, I've done that, resorted to lying because of how fear and insecurity and things like that. It's like a lot of times lying is like a result of fear, and it's like it's almost like you got to ask the question: I feel like if you really know the Father and you have that confidence and trust in Him, that you would know you wouldn't have to fear anything, because He has it all. He has it all in control, and it's just like that knowing, that confidence and that trust um, in the Father, and having that relationship with the Father. Yeah, you have that peace in that way, that He's in control of things. And so yeah, it's one of those things. It's like I've been in situations like that myself, where it's like you don't really know yourself until you go through a storm, and then it's like you may think you're on a certain level, and it's like then you go through that storm, and it's like, wow, I'm not where I thought I was. And it's like it's one of those things that that's what I was seeing here. Just yeah, so.
You know, that's an interesting point you just raised. You actually raised 2 points. You started off by talking about the decisions that were made, the mess that this was. Romans 8:28, right? And we know that all things work for the good for those that love Yahuwah, those that are called according to His purpose, right? He takes that mess, right? Remember I told y'all about, you know, my wife used to paraphrase that verse in her emails to me. At the end of her emails, this was back when we were dating, and said, God can turn any mess into a miracle. Look at this mess. Because Abraham said Sarah was his sister, or didn't say that it was his wife, I should say. Because he didn't say that it was his wife, Now all the wounds of the town get shut up. You know what I mean? Locked up. You know, they all sick. They need prayer. They need a healing because of his decision and how Yah turns it into a miracle, and people now see the true and living Elohim, right? So the second thing you said was, I forgot the second thing you said. The last thing you said. I can't remember. I have to come back to it. What was the last thing you said, Brian?
Oh, well, yeah, I was talking about, basically doing like I was talking about how the Yah doesn't give us, it's like how lying, when you lie, it's like there's a lot of times it's fear-based, and you're motivated by fear and insecurity, and how like when you have that relationship with Yah, like the scripture says in I think it's 2 Timothy, where it says that the Yah does not give us a spirit of fear, but power and a love and of a sound mind. And how when you have that relationship with the Father, it eliminates that fear and that anxiety. And it's like I see that like in Abraham, he's having that fear, and that is like, it seems like that's motivating him to lie in these situations. And it's like, and it's a self-assessment that we all have to do, like when we go through a trial or uncertain things. It's like, yeah, we get to that point where we don't fear man anymore, and it's like we know he has it all in control. And that was just my second point there.
Yeah, I remember what it was. You said we think we're in a better place than we really are until a trial hits.
Yeah.
So it made me think about the fact that, you know, oftentimes the weakest point or the most vulnerable we are is after a victory, after we've shown, you know, that we have faith, after we've shown that we're strong. We start believing our own press clippings, and then boom, we get hit because we think we are right. You know, we think we're more than we are. We start believing the fumes that come from us are perfume, you know, when it's really stench. You know what I mean? And it's always a dependency on Yahuwah and not the other way around, you know. So that's what I was thinking about when you said that. Go ahead, JP, and then Tyrone.
I just want to talk about, you know, it was interesting is that, you know, Abraham, of course, you know, he lied about her not being his wife. Abmelich gets this dream and the vision. And then what's interesting is that, I don't know, like maybe it's in the cult, I don't know, maybe because he wasn't told in the vision he needed to like give Abraham anything. But we see in verse 14, Abmelich goes, it says, and took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them unto Abraham and restored him Sarah's wife. And then also tells him, you know, in verse 15, dwell where it pleaseth thee. Then 16, he gives Sarah, or he tells Sarah, behold, I have given to thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes. So, I mean, it's just like, even though Abraham did this, like Abmelich somehow, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing or what it was, but like pays him out, like what happened in, I believe in Egypt.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like Abraham is just like, he's just getting blessed. Even though he did something wrong, don't get me wrong, he did something wrong, but he was still like taken care of. And again, it's just mind blowing in a way to like, wow, even though he shouldn't have did what he did, but you see the hand of Yah still there in some, you know, a wild fashion, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think at that point it was more about Yahuwah making it clear to be seen who he was. He wanted it to be known who he was. And the fear so gripped Abmelich that he did whatever was necessary to pay back someone for wrong. Whatever was customary when you did someone wrong. Even when we look into the Torah and we're looking at, you know, if you steal something if I steal your car, I can't, you know, I say, brother, forgive me. I can't come back to you and give you a bicycle and say, forgive me. That's not what forgiveness looks like. If I'm truly sorry for what I've done, not only am I going to bring you a car, I'm going to bring you 3 cars and pave your driveway from your house all the way down to the main road. Because that says, I'm sorry, I'm asking you for forgiveness. This is the action that I'm willing to do to receive that forgiveness from you. Brother, do you forgive me? That's why, people, they say, yeah, I'm sorry for doing this, I'm sorry for doing. No, it requires that you do some things. If I lie about you, right? Or if I call you a liar, I can't just say, JP, I'm sorry for calling you a liar. Nah, I got to say, brother, I'm sorry for calling you a liar, and then go back to all the people that I told you were a liar and say, he wasn't lying, I was wrong. Brother so-and-so, he wasn't lying, I was wrong. Sister so-and-so, he wasn't lying, I was wrong. And I'm going to come over to your house and cook you a meal. You know what I mean? And I'm being a little bit drastic, but at the same time, this is what was meant when Yahuwah said forgiveness. So he's saying, this is what I'm giving you to get forgiveness from you, so that you will accept my sorrowful act or what I was about to do. And I think stuff like that, what you just pulled out, is so missed because it's necessary. I can't sin against you and just think that it's okay that you forgive me. That's not what Scripture teaches. Scripture teaches that I'm bringing something to the table that makes you smile about the things that I'm saying. It makes you say, this brother truly is sorry for what he did. He's showing me by what he brought to the table. That's what Abmelich is doing here. He's obeying, right? And, while we're talking, I got a lot of hands raised. Let me get to the hands. JP, finish your thought, and then I'll go to Tyrone and then Brian.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty much done. But I think that's what we need to teach our children today, in this day and age. We got to teach them about, just like you said, there should be an action, and not just, oh, I'm sorry, and because my children, they say sorry, and I'm like, man, are you really sorry? Because I don't know, you just told me. But the action, I think, just makes me now today realize that we need to teach our children. There needs to be an action behind it, just like you had just spoke right now, because I think it's very important. So it can show people the depth of my how I'm sorry and I apologize. I want to make a wrong right, and that kind of mindset. So I think that's very important, man. So I appreciate
Absolutely. That's the principle of the script. That's what Yahuwah tells us to do. You don't find anything other than that in Torah when he talks about forgiveness, right? Go ahead, Tyrone.
Yeah, basically what you said, Brother Rod and Brother JP, is basically what I was going to say as well. That like in verse 9, where Abmelich called Abraham and said unto him, what hast thou done unto us, and what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Abmelich said unto Abraham, what sawest thou that thou hast done these things? Then Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me and slay me for my wife's sake. Right there, like you said, we see that fear was entered in him and so forth. And this gives our Father, the time to show who he is and the power that he has, like you said, so he was still seeing who the Father is. And this gives the time to see his power and his might and so forth to Abmelich and also to Abraham, because he stopped him from sinning and going forth and doing things that he did not know. And we see Abraham and everything going through all this through fear, showing him that you need not have fear. Wherever I send you, where I guide you, I will provide for you. And we see that down further, that he was provided even more. So whatever mission that the Father had for him, and he told him that vision and gave it to him, to fear not. So we see that unfolding here. So I'm like, wow, like it says, with the Father guides, he provides.
Yes, sir, brother. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Brother Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh yeah. I was looking at that principle that it's like in Proverbs it talks about if a thief is found out, he's to restore sevenfold what he took, and it comes out of Exodus. It's interesting. I was getting ready to say the same thing Tyrone was saying. It's like I believe Yah. Yeah, he gave Abraham that favor to let him know. It's like it builds. The father is he knows what he's like. He knows what he's doing. It's like he's not going. He's building Abraham's faith and trust, because it's like Abraham. It's like you see he doesn't really. He's kind of unsure. He's not really. He has that fear, but now he knows for sure that Yah got his back, and it's like, and it's that his faith is being built, and he gets to the point where later on, where he's willing to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, and that's how much his faith increased from this point on up to that point, and you see how that. Along the way, Yah, even in our own lives, I've been in tough spots where I've come to like, there's nothing else I can do. I've come to the end of myself on what I can do in a situation. And it's like, Yah, I was like, Yah, I can't do no more. And it's just like, just leave it at his feet. And like the scripture says, cast your care on him. And he comes through. And it's like, it's like, he's not a figment of our imagination. He's real. He's like in charge. He's our father. And it's like, and he gives us that grace, and it just builds our faith in the process, and that grace that he gives us. And we don't deserve it. Like and stuff. You look at, like you said, it's a mess. Or down south, it is a hot mess, what Abraham did, but we don't deserve it, but he came through anyway with that grace and that favor, and poured out that grace on Abraham, and it's just like in the process, just builds. I know his faith was increased, and it's the same thing in our lives as well. So it's like, that's all I wanted to add to that.
I mean, I agree. I think, you mentioned the grace and mercy that's shown to Abimelech, but we forget the grace and mercy that's shown towards Abraham. J. Pre brought up the fact that he was being blessed, and I pointed to how Abmelich was doing what was necessary to gain forgiveness for what he was about to do. But what about Abraham? Because all this came from him preserving his own life, and how Yah shows in this instance that everything we do doesn't just affect us. It was about to affect the whole city because of what he did, and the grace that he showed, and how he even put Abraham in a position to be prophet and pray to see the healing come through the Father through Abraham's prayer to heal the people. Right? I mean, how much grace is that? We cannot miss that part. So, yeah. Anything else?
One thing that I stuck out, and you guys covered a lot of it that I was going to talk about, but the one thing I find here that's interesting, there's a lot of left outs in here. All has to do with these things that have been done. And for this to happen to this man and his whole kingdom, I mean, that's pretty wild that all of their wombs were shut up, and and that because of this situation that transpired, this man went ahead and gave Abraham 1,000 pieces of silver, and he opened up his land to him to go wherever he wanted to dwell within his land, his kingdom. And the one part that really sticks out to me again is even though he explained to him, this is my wife, when he's speaking to Sarah, he's told him, behold, I have given your brother. So he takes it right back to that statement again about the brother instead of saying your husband. It's really a wild scenario there that's, you know, that's playing out here before us as we read this. And it's like he does these things and causes all this to happen, and this guy baraks him, blesses him because of this, and opens up his whole land to him. And then he opens up all of the wombs of all of these, his wife, his maid servants, and all that. It's like, is he proven, you know, he's showing something to this man, you know, that his faithfulness, and even to the point where he's given of himself. And I don't even know that he needs to. He could have been upset with Abraham for withholding and causing this to happen to him. But he takes it and goes the other way. So it kind of shows something about that man too, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Two things about what you just said. One, I think that it was definitely a reaction to his dream, and knowing that he did something wrong. And like we talked about earlier, it being customary for these things to come with repentance, these things to come with forgiveness. I'm going to give you these things. Please accept my apology.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, I'm almost willing to say that if this was a thing back then, Abimelech would have said, you know, when he got to this point, where is it? Verse, behold, I have given your brother, you know what I mean? Like there may have been a bit of sarcasm, because that was the whole reason this came, because at this point, he now knows that's his wife. He now knows that that's her husband, but he still chooses to use brother. So I wonder if there was sarcasm there. I mean, I'm speculating. I definitely don't want to impute something that's not really there, but it could possibly be what he did. You guys see that?
Yeah, I think that could definitely possibly be a possibility. Definitely.
Cool. All right. Anything else before we end chapter 20?
Yeah, that just might be sarcasm. These are human beings, so something.
Yeah, I mean, coming full circle of what just happened. You know what I mean?
That's that's. I know. I knowing myself, I probably will be a little sarcastic myself.
You got that right. But yeah. Amen, brother. So this concludes our Genesis chapter 20 study. Shabbat shalom, everyone.